Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, has called for a signature audit of the vote. Because many people may not realize this, especially if you only watch mainstream news, the recount they did not audit signatures. The Trump campaign is saying, how is that an audit if you didn't actually look at the signatures? They got a good point. If we're trying to figure out if the votes are legit, then you got to do signature verification. But it also kind of feels like they're just dragging things out. But maybe there's something to this. The bigger issue is there have been accusations that ballots look like they were machine printed and pristine. If that was not discovered in a recount, then they're not going to find, in my opinion, widespread voter fraud. And if there are signature mismatches, they may be able to disqualify some of these votes. But I'm not convinced it's going to go there very far. Now, the governor has called for a signature audit. I don't know if we're going to get one. But Georgia is going to do another recount. I mentioned this briefly in my previous segment. The reason why this is important, I'm bringing this up, is because Sidney Powell, Donald Trump's lawyer, has made accusations to the point of absurdity. Then I absolutely am. I'll put it this way. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and extraordinarily absurd claims require extraordinary evidence to several orders of magnitude larger than you'd expect. Check this out. Byron York says, just watched Trump lawyer Sidney Powell's interview with Newsmax last night. She flung accusations and theories right and left, including that the Republican governor of Georgia has accepted money as part of a conspiracy to defeat President Trump. But the governor's calling for a signature audit. They're mad that the governor certified the vote and now will do an audit because now it's too late. You've already certified. Of course, the governor is saying, well, Trump can now pursue other means of a recount and the results can be contested. Byron York says, Powell said Georgia GOP Governor Brian Kemp is, quote, in on the Dominion scam, accused Kemp and GA Secretary of State of accepting financial benefits in conspiracy to defeat Trump. Evidence? I can't give you any more details, she said. This is from Newsmax. Check this out. Powell said, Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up. And Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam with their last minute purchase of or award of contract to Dominion of $100 million. The State Bureau of Investigation for Georgia ought to be looking into the financial benefits received by Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State's family about that time. Newsmax says, just to clarify, you're saying that Governor Kemp, who's been a longtime ally of the president, is directly involved because of financial benefit in a conspiracy to defeat the president in Georgia? Powell responds, we have certainly been told that there is evidence of that and would warrant an investigation if anybody was actually going to do an honest investigation. Newsmax says, what more could you tell us about the alleged conspiracy, the governor's involvement? Powell responded, I can't give you any more details than that now, but it would certainly warrant an investigation. If it had been reported to me as a law enforcement officer, I would be investigating it steadfastly. My friends, I just got to tell you, the more I hear from Sidney Powell, the less I believe there is any evidence. That's just me. To be fair, as I often say, probably too much, I'm willing to wait. I understand the argument. She can't present the evidence in the court of public opinion. She needs it to be presented before the judge once they get to a Supreme Court hearing or something to that effect. But I got to tell you, I'm not going to believe that Trump supporting Republicans are all secretly turning on him. I'll tell you this. There's definitely rhinos, Republicans in name only, and many of them hate Donald Trump. So perhaps Governor Kemp, it's all been a big ploy. He's trying to endear himself among Trump supporters, but has secretly hated Trump the whole time. Look, if you're going to present me something like that, you're going to have to do more than just go on TV and say it over and over again. So I'll tell you what, I'm getting a little bored, but that's okay. I can be patient. We can wait until the 14th. And I'll tell you what I find really creepy. The Democrats keep saying that Donald Trump what he's doing is a threat to national security by not conceding and giving them access, blah, blah, blah. What's with the pressure campaign? Why are you demanding that I submit to you and just accept this? Nah, I'm chilling. We got time. What time is it? It's only the 22nd. We've got, 3.5 weeks, 3 weeks or so before the actual electoral college certification, the actual electoral college vote. So what's the big deal? Why the rush to shut all this down? Look, I'm going to tell you right now. If it turns out that Governor Kemp was secretly in on some plot Go buy yourself a lottery ticket. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying those odds are astronomical. But it's entirely possible. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I don't know if this audit in Georgia is going to do anything for Trump. I do know they've just announced the assignments for the Supreme Court. And a lot of people are saying things look good for Trump, but this could all just be, Trump's last ditch effort. Just because he's throwing the Hail Mary doesn't mean it's going to land. I'll tell you what concerns me about Sidney Powell. What she's saying sounds like internet rumor and conspiracy theory. Maybe somehow, and I mean this literally, she's come across the evidence, she's found the whistleblowers and got the affidavits, and there are things that we have not yet seen publicly. But it really does sound like she's just saying a lot of what we've already heard. So listen, I do not mean to impugn the honor, as I often say, probably too much, of Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell, but I'm going to say what I say to everybody else. Wonderful, good job. Let me know once you get the evidence. I'll gladly look through it. And if she's able to, really come out with evidence and the judges agree, well, then wow. I really do believe that Trump supporters are not going to walk away from this. Because the rhetoric I'm seeing is these people saying Trump is our last effort to save the Republic and things like that. Really drastic, rhetoric. And I understand where they're coming from. I mean, we've got this weird Build Back Better thing going on. Joe Biden's slogan. The thing that's weird about it is that it's being used all over Europe, too, the same slogan. Kind of, is this just Joe Biden plagiarizing the European Union's, COVID recovery plan? I mean, maybe that's Joe Biden. He's a plagiarist, right? So he was like, all right, Build Back Better. We'll do that. There you go. But it does seem like this great reset thing is bad for everybody. It does seem like we have more and more studies coming out saying the lockdowns are not the right way to approach this. But for some reason, that's what they keep doing. So when Republicans say these people, are threatening the Republic or something like that, I understand where they're coming from. But I'll tell you, man, you're going to have to give me evidence. I'm sorry. Just having Sidney Powell go on these TV shows and say this all the time. You even have the Newsmax guys, this quote is something, saying, just to clarify, you're saying that Governor Kemp, who's been a longtime ally of the president, is directly involved because of a financial benefit in a conspiracy to defeat the president in Georgia. Essentially, some people are saying that the Georgia governor cheated to beat Stacey Abrams, and now he's panicking because if they discover that the Democrats cheated, then he's going to lose his seat too, or be implicated or something like that. You know what? Maybe it's all one big scam, the Uniparty, as it were, right? You see that photo that's going around of Michelle Obama hugging George W. Bush? I love it. Let me tell you how the game is played. Because let's do this. Maybe there really is voter fraud. And you know what? I got to be honest. Evidence is on Trump's side. It is. It is. Not this evidence from Sidney Powell. I don't know what she's talking about. But the fact that you have people in Georgia saying there appears to be fraud, no doubt, they've said it. The fact that you've got the Voter Integrity Fund saying we've got widespread irregularities, potential fraud, really is. Hundreds of people in small sample sizes, large percentages of Republicans who mailed in their ballots, the ballots were never received. These things all aid Trump. And do you know why I take them seriously? Because it was the left that brought them up. I'm not exaggerating. It has always been the mainstream media and the left who have brought this up. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you John Oliver, November 3rd, 2019. Report of the Select Committee on Intelligence, United States Senate. Russian active measures, campaigns, and interference. Mentioning vulnerable to exploitation by a committed adversary. That's just one quick screen cap from a 20-minute segment with 5.2 million views from leftist John Oliver, where he said our voting machines are easily hackable. There is no security. Remarkable. I remember hearing him do this bit. I remember hearing hackers talk about doing. In fact, I've seen some hackers messing with voting machines. I was at an event. It's called DEF CON. And they had people showing off how they can easily hack voting machines. Like easily. Within minutes easily. Like in the booth easily where no one can see what they're doing. John Oliver brought it up. Guess what he says now? Last week tonight, tweeted this the other day. Hello to all our new viewers who've encountered our 2019 segment on voting machines through conservative media, using it to push Trump's voter fraud claims. First, sorry we swear so much. But second, the way people are using that segment is horse-ass. No, it isn't. This is creepy. This is like double speak. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. We warned you about voter fraud. Why? Because in the event Trump won, they were going to be like, Trump's cheating and stealing the election. And now that it's projected to be Biden, Trump is the one doing it, so they had to backpedal. Talk about dumb. But let me tell you something. Donald Trump's been consistent. Trump said even though he won, there was voter fraud. Remember that in 2016? He wins and he goes, there was still voter fraud, 3 million votes, non-citizens. And people are like, you won, dude. And he was like, no, there's voter fraud. Then he loses, there's voter fraud. It's like, okay, was that Trump playing 4D chess? Perhaps. If I say it now, people will believe me. Okay, you know what? I'm more inclined to believe the consistent approach that really believes it versus last week tonight's desperate attempt to say, no, we didn't really want to imply that. Oh, no. Conservative media. Let me tell you something. Who are they talking to? Hello to all our new viewers who've encountered our segment due to conservative media. Who are you talking to? You're talking to your audience. Think about this. The people who watch Last Week Tonight are liberals and leftists. Why would they need to issue a statement if it's conservative media? Are liberals watching Fox News or other conservative outlets or following conservatives on Twitter? I guess so. Enough to the point where Last Week Tonight was like, we better protect ourselves by lying about what is really going on. Here's what they say. If you watch our segment through to the end, you'll notice that we say the biggest vulnerability is if a state uses direct recording electronic voting machines or DREs, especially those without a paper trail. Let me stop you right there. You see, I want to make sure you can see through the lies as we move forward. You can see through the lies as I do. Our biggest vulnerability. He says, we say the biggest vulnerability. Great. Now, what about the general vulnerabilities? Plural. Because it's a 20-minute segment that goes through many different vulnerabilities. In fact, in one clip, he shows a woman just popping the machine open with a ballpoint pen and swapping out or like just getting into the system. Is that the biggest vulnerability? Maybe not, but it's a vulnerability, isn't it? Thank you for highlighting it, John Oliver. Very strange using a framing device to make it seem like all of that is irrelevant. Now that you can see through how they tried to avoid taking responsibility for saying there were many different vulnerabilities, let's read on. He says, good news. Of the states where the Trump campaign is contesting the election results, PA, GA, MI, WI, AZ, and Nevada, only Nevada still uses DRE machines. And even those produce a paper trail. On top of which, a huge proportion of votes this year came in on absentee ballots, which are, paper ballots. In the story, we also suggest that a good fail-safe is to perform a risk-limiting audit after an election is completed. GA is wrapping up its risk-limiting audit. PA, NV, and MI are piloting risk-limiting audits this year. AZ and Wisconsin are performing more limited audits this year. Would you like Wisconsin and Arizona to perform risk-limiting audits? Maybe the Republican-led state legislatures could get on that. You see how adversarial this is? They're not the conservatives. They're not the Republicans. The media isn't just a news outlet. It's conservative media. They know Last Week Tonight is a leftist or liberal show. Very much so a active liberal show. I wouldn't call it passive or traditional because I think passive and traditional liberals don't care about this stuff and are kind of like whatever. But why are they so desperate to inform their left-wing audience of that? The fact that they're saying maybe their Republican-led state legislatures could get on that clearly is signaling to their followers. Why did Last Week Tonight need to convince their active liberal followers that this is not true? Maybe it's because the narrative is, and they realized we did do a segment, we did talk about this. How creepy. He says, or they say, finally, and most importantly, there is no evidence that any voting machine fraud happened. In fact, some of the experts we consulted for our piece signed a letter regarding the Trump campaign's allegations. Would you like to read it? Here it is. If you didn't click through, here's the important part that says, we are aware of alarming assertions being made that the 2020 election was rigged by exploiting technical vulnerabilities. However, in every case of which we are aware, these claims either have been unsubstantiated or are technically incoherent. To our collective knowledge, no credible evidence has been put forth that supports a conclusion that the 2020 election outcome in any state had been altered through technical compromise. Wait, hold on. No credible evidence? The 6,000 votes in Michigan that got flipped from Trump to Biden. I know, I can already hear the leftists saying, Tim, that's a human error. Says who? Says who? You want me to take your word for it? No, I'm not going to take Trump's word for it either. It was initially reported as a computer glitch, and then they immediately, no, human error. I don't care which one it is. Investigate it. But to say there's no credible evidence, that's a lie. That's a lie. You want to know what's really going on? They did that segment because they were scared they were going to lose. They were angry at Donald Trump for winning, and they wanted an excuse to do it. Kyle Kalinske, progressive, tweets that the weird voter fraud stuff is becoming the right-wing Russiagate. He's not wrong. It is, in a sense, very similar. To be fair, however, the Russiagate stuff did not have any legitimate evidence. I get it. We were pretty much lied to a lot about the Russiagate stuff. You had people like Adam Schiff, you had Brennan, you had a bunch of people coming out saying all this stuff that wasn't true. We learned later when they were under oath, they were basically saying, no, we don't have any evidence. We're just lying to people. All right. With the Russiagate stuff, we didn't have regular people signing sworn affidavits. And that's the difference. But to be fair, I agree to a bit. I agree to an extent with Kyle Kalinske. The Sidney Powell stuff about Dominion and Venezuela, like, are we gonna do this like Venezuelan interference? Are we gonna talk about Brian Kemp being in on the cut? Like, I'm sorry, man, that's just too much for me. I can tell you this: I believe the rigging of the game was mail-in voting. It's what I've said the whole time. You see, what they did was they gave themselves an extra month to mass spam voter outreach groups, and that is well within the rules. I mean, it is. I think it's playing dirty. I think they cheated by changing the rules the very last minute, 11th hour rule changes to benefit themselves, and it played out. I had been saying for the entirety of this past year, as much as the left won't admit it, many of these grifters want to ignore the fact that I've said this. I was saying that mail-in voting will make it easier for younger voters to turn out, which will give a huge advantage to the Democrats. Sure enough, seems like that's what happened to an extent, not absolutely, but there was a larger turnout of younger voters for a variety of reasons, one of which was probably parents telling their kids to vote and also kids telling their parents to vote. Some college student coming home and being like, Mom, you got to vote. Your mail-in ballot is here. And then she's like, I don't know, whatever. No, you got to vote. You got to vote for Biden. Fine. We saw that video where I don't know if you saw the viral video where the woman is pressuring her dying dad to vote for Biden, even though he's a Trump supporter. And he says, okay, because it means, I'll do it for you. I wonder if he really did. Because if he really cared about his daughters, he wouldn't vote against what he thought would help them, right? Just because it would make them feel better. But that was a reality. That was what the Democrats did. Now, we have these sworn statements. We have these widespread irregularities. Sounds to me like, at the very least, we have evidence that this election was not good. Just like busted up in a lot of different ways. Widespread irregularity occurred. We have evidence of this. So last week tonight, all these other outlets, Sidney Powell, I look at this stuff and I'm like, fraud is the wrong direction. I'm sorry, it is. It's the wrong direction. And that's why I don't think we're going to find anything with Georgia, but the fraud allegations are Trump's best play to block up certification. Maybe that's why he's doing it. I'm not entirely convinced he's got the evidence. I'm not at all. But we will see, because it may be lawfare. I have said it since the election. You know what lawfare is? It's using the legal system to win. It doesn't mean Trump is right. It doesn't mean Trump is wrong. It means Trump has a law strategy where he's going to freeze certifications due to questions of impropriety and irregularity and fraud. And that will get him over the finish line. What it'll essentially do is it'll block certification. Joe Biden doesn't get the votes he needs. And then Trump gets elected by the House delegations, which the Republicans have more of. Let me just say this. Trump doesn't need fraud. This is what people don't understand. In Wayne County, Michigan, 71% of their ballot count was unbalanced, meaning there are instances where the voter signatures in the books of people coming in to vote didn't match the amount of votes. And it's a problem if it's more or less. Either way, you got a problem with this. 70 to 71% of the books. That is widespread. You've got the Voter Integrity Fund saying, in their sample polling, they found 44% in some jurisdictions of Republicans claimed they mailed in their ballots, but the ballots were never recorded as being received. That's a problem. The fraud may be to distract the likes of the left, to throw them off base so they think Trump is playing a hand he's not really playing. They say, when you look at Trump's lawsuits, Trump says fraud over and over again, but then when it comes down to his actual legal claims, he doesn't say fraud at all. Maybe that's on purpose. to be fair, Sidney Powell is going on TV and screaming about fraud, but I'll tell you what, I'm not entirely convinced they're all playing with a full deck. That's just my opinion. But I'm also not entirely convinced that they're not playing with a full deck. I honestly just don't know. Sidney Powell doesn't seem like she's crazy. She seems like she knows what she's doing, and Rudy Giuliani doesn't seem like he's crazy. But listen, we don't know whether or not the Dominion voting thing is meant to be some kind of 4D chess to throw off our opponents, or they mean it literally. I was reading quotes from Sun Tzu. I posted one. The most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate your opponent. But there are many. Some of them say, appear weak. Things like that. Be where your enemy is not. Appear weak. Make your opponent think you are vulnerable when you are strong, and make your opponent think you are strong when you are vulnerable. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. If you are weak, you want to scare them so they don't attack, even though because you're actually vulnerable. You're vulnerable, right? But if you are strong, you want them to come at you because then you can crush them, surprise them with your might. Some people on the right think that Sidney Powell is playing that game, that Giuliani and them like, whoa, whoopsie, because they're actually waiting before they reveal their evidence to get to the Supreme Court. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I just don't. You know why? Because they wouldn't be doing press conferences about it saying, here's all the evidence we have. But perhaps that is the ruse. And perhaps the evidence they have is actually something very different. Perhaps accusing, Brian Kemp or whatever is just all part of a distraction because they have some other legal play. Or in the end, it's all part of the play to just jam up the process. Let me show you a couple more things, though. Check this out. Alyssa Milano in 2018. Here's a 5-minute video called I Hacked an Election. So can the Russians. Oh, okay. So if they say that Venezuela was involved, am I supposed to cry about it and be like, no, don't do it? I'm going to be like, okay, well, let's investigate. We investigated that one. We'll investigate this one. Bring on the special prosecutor. I got another 3 years, although it's going to be nightmarish. We have this Twitter thread from Yossi Gestetner. He shows all of these different tweets going back throughout the past year, 2 years, 3 years. Many mainstream news outlets talking about hacking election systems. This is what I've talked about over and over again with Trump. He will see something in the news, he will say it, and then the news will invert their position and claim the opposite is true. Listen, so long as the media told me for years that that our elections could be and probably were hacked, Trump must be right. Now, whether or not they actually have this outlandish and crazy evidence is yet to be seen. But we'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on a different YouTube channel. This may be surprising to many people. If you go to YouTube, if you type this in, youtube.com/Timcast, it'll bring you to a different channel. Don't ask me why YouTube did it that way. I did not set it up this way. This channel is Timcast News, even though it says Timcast. Again, type into your address bar youtube.com/Timcast, and you will go to a different channel where you can subscribe. And my next video will be coming up at 4 p.m., and I will see you all then.